we are live. Welcome to another edition of our weekly Wednesday event where I have the fortunate opportunity to get to interview some of the top agents all across the country. And this time we have a special guest, Darcy. It's not in the country, in the Americas. So we have Darcy from Vancouver. So I'm really interested to hear the differences between what has happened there from the shelter-in-place perspective, given we've had several different speakers talk about what has been going on all across the U.S. But before we get to that, let's have Darcy go ahead and do an intro about yourself, share a little bit of your background, what you did prior to real estate, how long you've been in real estate, and if you operate a team or kind of the setup that you have today.
Wow. I don't often talk about what I did before real estate. I've been in real estate for, I guess, officially licensed for just about 18 years. Before that, my formal education's in robotics engineering. So it's a little bit of a leap. People go, what? You're a realtor? Why? And really, I guess the short story is my wife at the time didn't like my career traveling all over the world, doing projects for different things and never being around. And I became a realtor, and ultimately that didn't work out with her. So I'm still a realtor. Love it. I love what I do. I have a team. Myself and my partner started a team about almost 8 years ago. And we have now 6 full-time realtors and 2 full-time admin staff. We sell about, our target this year is 125 homes. So we try to keep fairly busy, and we're in a market where the average sale price is just over $1 million. So sales volume is pretty good. We're pretty happy. We're very systemized, and that allows me to have a little bit more flexibility. I get to deal with clients, and the staff takes care of a lot of the background work. So it works out pretty well for us. Very nice.
And can you share, in terms of the team makeup, do you have specific agents that are buyer's agents, some that are seller's agents, or is it they do the whole thing, they just are working under one umbrella?
Yeah, they're just working under one umbrella. We really discussed the concept of having buyer's agents, but decided that it actually makes more sense both for us and for our agents to be both. They do listings, they do buyers. I think on listings, the team side of it is more substantial than it is on the buy side. But everybody does both. Everybody does listings and buyers. We're a more listing-based team, probably due to leadership influence, I think, more than anything. We could probably expand our business by dealing with more buyers, but we do probably about 70% listings of our total business.
Wow, that's incredible. And so can you share with the audience, so in America, for the most part, it's about mid-March, we basically had a nationwide shutdown, and every area had its own phase of how they reopened. In your area, was there anything like that, or what was the backstory?
Yeah, well, it was mid-March. Actually, in British Columbia, where we are, the provincial state of emergency was declared on March 17th. So March 17th, everything stopped. It was, shelter in place, basically. There are some essential services, obviously, not a lot different than what's happening in the United States. And strangely, about a week after the kind of lockdown started, real estate was declared an essential service, simply because real estate's a huge economic driver here. And there's so many people that are involved in that business, from lawyers and the buyers and sellers that are in process. The provincial government said, we can't abandon these people and leave them in the middle of a transaction and not allow them to close it. So we were declared an essential service, but that didn't mean business as usual. We're not allowed to do open houses or live open houses. We're doing virtual open houses, which technology has really allowed us to do a lot of things that even a few years ago we couldn't have done. We're doing a lot of showings virtually. Just last week, we were allowed to kind of reopen for business, which means that we could go back into our offices, but we have to have appropriate social distancing policies in place. We have to have a policy manual for both the employees and our guests that are coming to the office, and appropriately positioned and distanced, and we have to provide hand sanitizer and masks and all that kind of stuff for staff and visitors. And on the out of the office side, it's a little strange. March 17th, the tap shut off for business. Even transactions that we had that were in process, most of them stopped if they weren't already in the place that they were firm and just working towards closing. Buyers stopped viewing homes because we essentially weren't allowed to view homes. Sellers that were in the process of getting their homes ready to put on the market stopped. And I would say up until probably about 10 days ago, it was full stop. And now we're starting to re-engage.
So you had basically a little over 2 months of everything at a complete halt. Yes.
Wow. February and the first 10 days of March were super busy for us. We were like, going great guns and looking like we were going to have a fantastic spring. And then it shut off in March. So from mid-March till mid-May, we essentially did nothing.
Really? So in America, what's interesting is, that's very, wow. I thought we had it bad here. So here in America, we are able to, by appointment only, go still see properties, and offers were still being made, but just a few weeks after the shelter in place happened. But it sounds like from in your area, like even those private showings were not allowed. Is that fair to say?
No, we're allowed to do private showings, but most people weren't willing to.
Wow.
There were still offers being written, but the contrast between early March and early April, where normally April and May are the busiest months of the year in terms of transactions, but the contrast between the beginning of March and the beginning of April was amazing. Right. We went from super busy deals every day kind of thing to we're booking one showing a week.
Wow.
And it's picked up a little bit now, but certainly we have those protocols where scheduled appointments for showings, and we have to provide hand sanitizer, gloves, masks. Buyers aren't allowed to touch anything in the homes, can't have more than 2 people in a property at a time, and we have to remain 6 feet away from even our buyers that are in the homes. Probably the strangest thing I find is just with the colleagues that you do business with all the time, where you see other realtors out when you're showing homes and that kind of stuff. It's really odd not being able to shake hands.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a big part of our business, is that relationship aspect with the other agents. And it's kind of become awkward. I'm sure it'll at some point get back to normal, but that's been really strange.
Now, I noticed you have it looks like you're in the office right now. Are your colleagues and coworkers wanting to come into the office? Do you feel you will still need an office moving forward, or what is your perception of the office space itself?
Well, our office space is kind of unique anyway. We have an office. This is our team office. It's not a brokerage office, so this is our team office. And we have this space for our team, but we also rent out office space to others. So we have a development marketing company in here. We have a staging company. We have 2 mortgage brokers. We have a lawyer that rent space from us. So, it's more of a shared office space that's keeping people from commuting to downtown locations. We're a little bit out in the burbs, so we do have people that work all over the place. But, April 1st, basically all of our tenants in our office space left.
Wow. What were
So
they not long-term contracts, or were they?
we don't,
How
yeah,
does?
we don't do that. We do month to month, just
Oh, really?
because
Right.
it's super easy for us to fill the space, and even if we don't, it's not the end of the world. But
Mhm.
certainly, from a downtown core perspective, there's a lot of people that are not going to go back to their offices.
Right.
So that's definitely going to be a trend. So our little office space where people can come in on an hourly basis or a daily basis and rent an office space is going to work well in the future.
Hmm.
We, obviously, we're with EXP, so we don't have a brokerage office, which
Right.
is just fine with us. We don't need one. We do things in the cloud anyway, and we do offer a lot of training that it doesn't matter if people are here. We have space to have training in our office, but most of the time the agents that attend the training are attending remotely anyway. So
Hmm.
in that respect, no change. I think just from a work perspective, I can work from anywhere.
Hmm.
We have this office. It's not a huge piece of overhead, so we'll keep it.
Got it. And so, can you share a little bit of um, the trends that you have found over the last, let's say, in the beginning of the year, were people at that time buying in downtown Vancouver area? Were they buying in? I believe there's like some pretty large. I forget what the island is called. There's a very large
Vancouver Island, that's a
Vancouver.
whole different market.
Oh, is it okay?
Yeah.
Like, do you see? Um, was there a big traction of a lot of people that really wanted to get closer and closer to downtown
Yeah.
pre-COVID, and is there any signs of what you're seeing right now?
Well, certainly pre-COVID, the market was quite busy, like quite active. Lots of buyers kind of coming off the fence. The mortgage rates, everybody was afraid that rates were going to start creeping up this year. And early in the year, January and February, that looked like it wasn't going to be the case. They were going to be stable. Now they've come down. So,
Hmm.
uh, but yeah, there was lots of buyer activity, lots of enthusiasm about the market, the spring market, and then COVID shut it off. And yeah, we're seeing a difference. Certainly, the rental market, like rent rates in the downtown core have dropped significantly, and by significantly, I'm talking like 20% almost.
Wow.
Uh, and that's simply because of real estate's a supply and demand market, and all the people that were doing Airbnb are now in the long-term rental market.
Right.
The tourism market stopped. There's no
Yeah.
tourists coming. There's no flights, and
Right.
that's huge for Vancouver. And there's a large number of Airbnbs downtown that
Hmm.
have suddenly gone onto the rental market. So when the rental prices go down, people are sometimes encouraged to rent rather than buy. But I'm still seeing lots of vacancy in rental downtown, and people are definitely trending to be looking out in the burbs, particularly in cases where they had an office job downtown and their company said, well, we can set you up to work remotely. And now that they're set up to work remotely, they're finding that productivity is almost the same, and in some cases better. And the costs of having the workers in the office is lower, so the corporate overhead is lower. So I see a real trend of people moving out of the core into the burbs. It's more affordable for them to buy a house.
Hmm.
Even little things that you don't think about that often is things like parking.
Hmm.
When you go downtown, and I know it's the same in San Francisco, when you go downtown and you work downtown, the biggest problem you have if you don't live downtown is how do you get there and where do you park if you drive? And it's expensive.
Right.
So that trend definitely seems to be something to watch. As we really saw a trend over the last probably 5 years, especially, of urbanization of population. Like people were moving out of the smaller towns into the big centers.
Hmm.
And now we're kind of seeing a little bit of the opposite, but people aren't talking about moving to small towns. They're
Right.
just talking about moving out of the core of the city into the burbs. And over the last probably month, I would say, March, April, not so much. People weren't talking about that so much, but certainly in May, people started talking about, hey, I'm going to try to continue to do my job remotely and move out to the burbs where I can afford a different type of home.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you suspect prices will rise in the burbs? Because if you think about the density in the downtown corridor, I mean, they all just build up, right?
Yeah.
Generally, but if there's even a small outflow of those people that go into the burbs are basically just independent houses for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's condos, but there's nowhere this kind of density. Do you see prices actually going up because they can't even take on this outflow of such a dense area, or what are your thoughts?
Well, right now in the suburbs, we're seeing a lot of competition in kind of mid-priced homes. So, in a market where you wouldn't expect that we're going to have competing offers and properties selling for over asking and that kind of thing. Right now we are.
Mm.
There's not a lot of property available on the market. The inventory is probably about half what it normally would be,
Mm-hmm.
but the buyers are competing for the good listings. So I think in the suburban markets, we're going to see more of that. Some of the economists are forecasting huge declines in real estate prices, like 20%. Honestly, what we've seen from March to now, we've actually seen a slight increase in prices, which kind of defies logic, but it's true. And we're certainly seeing in the mid-price, the luxury homes, the high-price stuff isn't really selling.
Right.
The mid-price stuff is starting to sell again. People are qualifying for mortgages. They're buying. And yeah, I think that it is probably going to create a little bit more balance in pricing. The cost of a condo downtown versus a townhouse in the suburbs or a detached house in the suburbs, they're similar, which you get 2 to 3 times the living space and potentially a little yard for the same price, and then you don't have to drive to work if you're working remotely. Yeah, I think that's going to have an impact. We'll have to see what happens in the fall. I think the fall is really going to be interesting because that's when we're going to see the impact of the people that have lost their jobs. Like, what's going to happen with their housing situation? Are they going to be forced to sell in some cases? And, if that creates an influx of inventory into the market, it's potentially going to drive the prices down, but we don't know that yet.
Is there any, how much bank support is there in Canada these days? So if in the US, it's honestly too easy to get forbearance right now, which basically delays payment altogether and allows them to potentially restructure a loan. Is there that kind of early government support in Canada?
There is. For those of you watching that don't know, in Canada, the banking industry is much more tightly regulated than it is in the United States. Mm-hmm. And the majority of home loans are insured by the federal government. So essentially what the federal government has said to all of the banks is that you must set up a system that allows people with mortgages to defer their mortgage payments. So that's there. People can defer their mortgage payments, and it basically just extends the amortization of their loan. It's not, they're not being forgiven; they're just being deferred. So it's going to increase interest costs, but it's allowing people that have lost their jobs to stay in their homes. So yes, that's certainly there. And we're lucky enough to have lots of government programs that are helping people that are temporarily out of work, that they're receiving a guaranteed $500 a week from the government, which for a lot of young people is as much as they were making anyway.
Right.
And there's credit card interest deferrals, or in some cases, Some of the banks are actually crediting back the entire amount of the interest on credit cards if you apply, and others are 50%. And they have all set up systems where online you can just go in and defer your minimum payment on your credit card if you're carrying a balance. So there's lots of programs in place for people that are helping right now.
Mm-hmm.
They probably won't last forever.
Yeah. In general, from what you've seen in the past, like what percentage of your buyers are just local individuals, and how much do you see that are foreign buyers? Let's say early, pre-COVID, and even as of right now.
As of right now, there are no foreign buyers, but we're starting to get inquiries again. And honestly, the majority of the inquiries that we get are from the United States, not from some other country. So the United States is actually the biggest foreign consumer of real estate in British Columbia, or at least in the lower mainland of British Columbia. We do also have some buyers from overseas. We had a large influx of immigrants from Hong Kong in the late 80s, early 90s. And now we're kind of at that point where there's a few more moving from there that have family here and that kind of thing. We also have some immigration from India, from Iran, from mainland China has been significant over the past decade or so. But in terms of an overall percentage of our market, the vast majority of it is people moving from place to place within Greater Vancouver, or immigration from other parts of Canada. So as a percentage, and people always say, oh no, the Vancouver market is like heavily influenced by offshore money. Well, in the luxury, like the super high end, of course it is. And if you look at real estate around the world, that's the case. It's the same in San Francisco. But really, in terms of the overall influence of the market, it's about 5%.
Wow, that's it.
Yeah.
It definitely catches a lot of headlines, especially a few years ago when there are these headlines. And I'd love to get your opinions of it, because a lot of it is generally clickbait. But there were these comments of mainland Chinese people a few years ago were just buying houses and keep leaving them as empty.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just mainland Chinese people.
Okay.
There's a lot of people. And what people don't understand is there's reasons that people are doing that. I mean, the value of the land is significant. And, in Greater Vancouver, the value of land over the last 200 years has doubled every 12 years. Mm-hmm. So it's rising at about 6% a year long term. Mm-hmm. And that's just the dirt. So if somebody wants to build a luxury home, and around the world, most luxury buyers don't have just one home. Mm-hmm. They have a home in Vancouver. They have a home in New York. They might have a home in LA. They might have a home, somewhere else in Europe or whatever. And yes, there are some instances where people bought luxury homes that are, $5, $6, $8 million, and they want to either rebuild or renovate that home. And the time it takes them to get a permit to do that is years. It's not months, it's years. Mm. To get a permit for construction of a single family home in Vancouver right now, it's about a 1-year waiting period before you can get the permit. And then it's the time of construction on top of that. So it takes a long time. And many of these homes are in that process of either planning, reconstruction, or renovation, or they're homes that people have bought as an investment. Sometimes they're part of a land assembly where it's going to be redeveloped into higher density. But the general public doesn't know that or understand it. So yes, there's some of that, but it's certainly not. It's not as big a deal as it's made out to be in the press.
Interesting. But the the government did do certain aspects to try to curb it though, right? Because I understand there is some sort of additional taxes related to vacancy. Is there some new things that were added? Because there is a lot of social, people is just socially upset about it, but I understand there may be some sort of other tax to try to prevent.
There are several other taxes, actually. There's actually several things have been done. First, the provincial government put in a foreign buyers tax, which is actually a few years ago now. It was in, I guess it was 2016 that first came in. So there's a foreign buyers tax. So if you're not a BC resident or a Canadian resident or permanent resident status, then you pay an additional tax when you purchase the property, which is quite significant. Now, in addition to that, if you don't live in the property and it's vacant, and there isn't some specific reason for it to be vacant, there is what's called a speculation and vacancy tax, which is 2% of the assessed value of the property annually.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's big.
Yeah.
And then some municipalities like the city of Vancouver also has a Vancouver vacant homes tax, which is also payable if the home sits vacant and it's not under permit or it doesn't have a tenant in it, or if it's actually just vacant and just sitting there, then yes, there's taxes to be paid. Now, the amount of revenue that's been generated by all these taxes isn't a lot. So these taxes being in place has kind of, I guess, quieted the storm a little bit in terms of public displeasure with all these vacant homes, because they're actually not vacant for no reason. There are some certainly that are vacant and people are paying these taxes, but the revenue being generated certainly isn't at the level that the public or the media thought it would be.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, that's very interesting. Now, do you find many of them are just converting those into some rentals then, or it just that number wasn't that high to begin with?
I think a number of them were already rentals, and to be perfectly honest, there are places where it's obvious that there are homes that are vacant that aren't being occupied, but a lot of the homes that are tenanted, the tenants don't take as good a care of the property as the homeowner would, so they might look like they're vacant and not cared for, which is just as much of an eyesore in a neighborhood as a vacant home might be. So there's certainly some of that has kind of come to light where, they are tenant occupied and the tenants, travel for business or whatever. So there might be periods of time, like a month at a time, where there's no one there. But it's actually an occupied home. Somebody lives there. Somebody is paying rent there. Somebody's paying utilities there. The property taxes are being paid and all that kind of stuff. It's not just an abandoned property. So there's more to it than most people think. They just try to point the finger at the bad guy and say, oh, somebody's destroying the appeal of our city. Well, I don't think that's anyone's intent. The reason that people buy property in this area is because of the character of the area. It's beautiful here, where we have mountains on one side of us, ocean on another side of us, and everything here you could want. Like, you can go to the world's best ski resort. It's an hour from my door, and on my way there, I can play 9 holes of golf and in the sunshine, right? So I can go sailing, golfing, and snow skiing all in the same day. And there's not many places in the world where that can happen.
Right. Wow. That does sound like a dream. Very nice. And so can you share from your business perspective, what percent was through referrals? What percent are you doing any sort of advertising? And moving forward, do you see that those ratios change at all?
Yeah, the vast majority of our business is repeat and referral. But we are, we do get some business from Facebook and from just internet leads from our website, or, in Canada, we have this great website called Realtor.ca, which is basically the whole country's MLS combined into one website.
Okay.
So, it's in Canada, there's about 100 different MLSs, not like in the States where there's thousands. But they all feed into this one website that's available around the world. So you could go on there from your place in the United States and look at properties all over Canada. So we do get some leads from that. We get some leads from our own website. We get some leads from Facebook, and we get a lot of referrals. We just have a lot of past clients that know us, like us, and trust us. So most of our business is referrals.
Interesting. Is Zillow or Redfin, those types of companies, in your market at all?
Redfin exists, but not at they don't have a presence.
Okay.
And Zillow also exists in Canada, but not like it does in the States.
Right.
It definitely does not have the foothold in Canada that it has in the States. It's not the same here. And, from a realtor perspective, we're lucky because we have this, great website that's been around for a long time that is co-owned by all the realtors in the country, and it has all the listings on it.
Right.
And it has, lots of other great features that the public likes to use. So for a competitor like a Zillow to come in and create a website, it's more difficult than it is in the US. Now, certainly in terms of the organization of real estate in Canada, it's not as fragmented as it is in the US.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for me to operate in all the municipalities around Greater Vancouver, I use one MLS.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's one. Like, I don't have memberships in multiple different MLS providers. It's one. So it's quite different than most markets in the US.
Yeah. Was it always that way, or was it the MLS saw the need, might as well join together and become one entity? Was it ever fragmented?
Well,
From
there
what you
are.
know?
Yeah, I'm. Even in the time that I've been around, it's changed. Like, we didn't have technology when I started selling real estate. We were on
Right.
5-part carbon forms.
Right.
Press hard, you're making 5 copies.
Right.
And our MLS was a book. Like, we carried around this, soft cover paper Bible that had all the listings in it. That was our listing database. And then, we were one of the first areas in North America that actually had a computerized MLS database. And at that point, it was divided up. So there was Greater Vancouver, Fraser Valley, and there used to be five regions within kind of the Lower Mainland that all had independent MLSs. But once the technology was there, it very quickly became kind of a partnership between the local real estate boards that run the MLSs, and it's been combined into one for a long time.
Wow, that's awesome. Actually, what's interesting is in the Bay Area, we have a lot of different MLSs, but fortunately, they did work out a way that we're able to see the others and make updates to the other, even though they're still separate. They didn't go through the journey that you guys went through of actually just making it one.
Yeah.
But at least there is that access. So we're not having, I know other areas, like you literally cross the other city, you have nothing now, which is just crazy. But fortunately in the Bay Area, you still get access to the others. You can see what's going on. You can pull stats, but it is still, you're right, it's still fragmented.
Yeah. So for us in Greater Vancouver, it's one database, which makes it
way easier,
much easier for us. And it actually provides a much better service for the public. I mean, if I had my way, and I probably never will in my lifetime, but if I had my way, there'd be one MLS for the whole province of British Columbia.
Right.
Which, I mean, it's a massive land area, But the majority of the people are in the Greater Vancouver area.
Mm-hmm.
But there's still multiple different systems outside of the Greater Vancouver area.
Mm-hmm. Got it. And so how are you staying on top of mind to your clients these days? Did you used to run like client appreciation events, live events?
Yes.
But with that, how are you looking forward I mean, you can't really do as much of that today, at least in the foreseeable future. How are you staying on top of mind and just checking in on them? Like what strategy are you doing?
Well, I'll tell you, first of all, our biggest client event, and we've been running it for, this would have been our 13th year,
Wow.
is an Easter egg hunt. And we get about 600 of our clients that come out to our Easter egg hunt. And of course, this year we had to cancel it. It's also a giant fundraiser for the local food bank, which is too bad, but we weren't allowed to hold it this year. So it was a big miss. And, it's interesting that probably half of the people that would normally come to our Easter egg hunt either called, texted, or emailed us and said, "Hey, just thinking about you. Happy Easter." So that's the kind of impact that you can create by having, and it's a community event. Like, you have 600 people that gather in a local park to have an Easter egg hunt every year for 12 years in a row. It becomes a thing, right? So people miss it because that's what they did on Easter Sunday for, the past 10 or 12 years. So yeah, that was we definitely missed that one. It was like, wow, that's the one time a year where we see a lot of our clients in one place at one time. So we've just had to, and honestly, the initial shock of, wow, like our society is essentially shut down. The initial shock of that was pretty big for a lot of people. And, we actually took a couple of weeks before we kind of even tried to engage anybody or chat with anybody. But really right now we're really just using technology, talking to people through Facebook. And, it's funny, a lot of people don't use the telephone anymore. We have some people, but a lot of it is like some form of instant message, whether it's Facebook Messenger or text messages or that kind of thing. There's a lot of that. I mean, I haven't looked, but I bet that my text message count is probably in the, it's got to be probably 15,000 range per month now. So it's a lot. Like there's a lot of text messages going on. We do try to, certainly we have some clients that we're still engaged with and transacting business with. So they're quite vocal right now. When something good is happening in their lives, they're telling the world. So that's actually been pretty significant over the last couple of months as well, where we're actually still helping somebody, but we're making sure they're safe. We're making sure that we're following the required protocols. We're making sure that we have the technology in place where we can actually show their home without allowing strangers into their house. So there's been a lot of that kind of viral marketing that's going on behalf of our clients. So that's probably, I guess, the biggest win. If that continues for the rest of my career, I'm going to be pretty happy.
Nice. Very nice. I'll finish off with one more question. Out of all the areas that you have seen, and a lot of areas might have been gentrified, a lot of maybe new opportunities given the change, are there particular areas in the metro that that you're very bullish on than before? So it sounds like downtown is likely there's going to be some negative impact just given the density. You mentioned about rent, likely housing, but are there other areas, whether it's Vancouver Island or northern parts of Vancouver, that you're very bullish on, especially now, or it has been going on for some time that people don't know about?
Well, I think people are starting to learn about more of the outer edges of the suburbs. Like, Vancouver itself is quite small geographically and quite dense. But as you move out, there's a lot of other cities, like every metro area. There's a lot of other cities that are attached. my feeling personally is that, well, certainly growth wise, we're going to see a lot of growth in Surrey and Langley and in Maple Ridge, which are kind of the outer reaches of the lower mainland of British Columbia. So those are kind of the areas, like if I had to pick two and one on each, if you don't know the geography here, we have a big river, the Fraser River, that runs right through the middle of the area. And there's municipalities on both sides and bridges, much like, the Bay Area, there's bridges everywhere. We have bridges everywhere too. And we're also in an earthquake zone. So if there's an earthquake, all the bridges are going to fall and nobody's going to be able to go anywhere. So yeah, on the south side of the river, the Langley area is going to grow over the next few years. The transit access to it is going to be better, and prices are going to increase. On the north side of the river, kind of up against the mountains, a little bit more wilderness area, and it's actually where I live now. I keep moving further east out of Vancouver. It's simply because it's more affordable, and you can have a pretty nice home without scaring yourself to death with the price. So Maple Ridge is actually an area that still has a little bit of a little bit more of a rural vibe, but is also going to grow. It's the most affordable area in Greater Vancouver, and it's a great value. So I think we're going to see a lot in those two areas, primarily, where people are going to be attracted to live, and if they can work remotely and not have to go downtown, then those are going to be explosive growth.
Interesting. And what are the average prices there? And are they generally new homes being constructed, or are they just older homes that people just didn't have an appetite for before?
Well, if you're looking for a detached home, like a detached single family home, and you want something new, you have to go out that far. Because most of the stuff downtown, I mean, there's some infill development where they're knocking down an old house and putting up a new one, but the bulk of it is an hour out of the core to get to an area where you can have a lot with a single family home on it. So kind of the normal price for a single family home in those, like in Maple Ridge or Langley, would be in the 1.25, 1.3 million area.
Got it.
That's normal for a detached home. There's also, townhome market out in the burbs where, you can buy a pretty nice townhouse for $600,000. You can buy a condo for, a 1-bedroom condo is probably around the $350,000 range.
Wow. Very nice. Okay. Yeah. I was a little surprised, actually. I thought it would be a lot less going that far out, but
no,
yeah,
if you go downtown, that same 1-bedroom condo would be that's $350, and the burbs would probably be $800. So
I see. Interesting. Very nice. Well, let's go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you so much for all of your insights. What are the best ways of people to get a hold of you? What are the best ways?
Best way is probably email or text. You can email me. My email is darcy@nestgroup.ca. You can find our website online, nestgroup.ca. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Nest Group. Just look for Nest Group. Or you can text me or call me directly on my cell phone at 604-671-4092.
All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to you. It was great to learn about the local market. Like I said, this is the first time we've done one out of the States. So it is very different to hear.
Come to Canada, you'll love it.
Well, I've been to Vancouver many times. I do love it. Can't deny on that. Well, very good. We'll wrap it up. Next week, we'll have 2 more special guests for our weekly Wednesday special. We're just kind of wrapping some of those details up. But other than that, thank you for tuning in. Have a good rest of the week. Bye now.
Thanks, Spencer.
Hey, YouTube world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm glad that you dropped by. If you liked this video, please be sure to smash this subscribe button here. And if you want to see one of my latest videos, please choose this one here. Bye now.